Okay, so now we shall begin. Sorry for the misstep. I guess I also will just start with a little bit of space setting and just sharing gratitude with those of Ra for providing this teaching through the LL Research Group, and thanks also to LL Research Group, Don and Carla and Jim for their efforts, and to the new team, the new generation, for continuing to steward this information. And yeah, sending out love and gratitude. Thanks so much for this opportunity to study the law of one. Okay, here we go. Jumping back in at 1632.
1632, questioner. Thank you very much. Can you tell me how the Confederation of Planets was formed and why? I am Ra. The desire to serve begins in the dimension of love or understanding to be an overwhelming goal of the social memory complex. Thus, those percentiles of planetary entities, plus approximately 4% more of whose identity we cannot speak, found themselves long, long ago in your time seeking the same thing, service to others. The relationship between these entities as they entered an understanding of other beings, other planetary entities, and other concepts of service was to share and continue together these commonly held goals of service. Thus, each voluntarily placed the social memory complex data in what you may consider a central thought complex available to all. This then created a structure whereby each entity could work in its own service while calling upon any other understandings needed to enhance the service. This is the cause of the formation and the manner of the working of the Confederation. Questioner, with such a large number of planets in this galaxy, I was wondering if you say there are approximately 500 Confederation planets. That seems to me to be a relatively small percentage of the total number of fourth and fifth density planets around. Is there any reason for this relatively small percentage in this Confederation? I am Ra. There are many confederations. This confederation works with the planetary spheres of 7 of your galaxies, if you will, and is responsible for the callings of the densities of these galaxies. Questioner, would you define the word galaxy as you just used it? We use that term in this sense as you would use star systems. Questioner, I'm a little bit confused as to how many total planets then roughly does the confederation that you are in serve? I am Ra. I see the confusion. We have difficulty with your language. The galaxy term must be split. We call galaxy that vibrational complex that is local. Thus, your sun is what we would call the center of a galaxy. We see you have another meaning for this term. Questioner, yes, in our science, the term galaxy refers to the lenticular star system that contains millions and millions of stars. And this had occurred earlier in our communications, this area of confusion. I'm glad to get it cleared up. Now, using the term galaxy in the sense that I just gave you of the lenticular star system that contains millions of stars, do you know of the evolution in other galaxies besides this one? I am Ra. We are aware of life in infinite capacity. You are correct in this assumption. Questioner.
Actually, maybe that's a good place to pause.
Yeah.
Thanks, BJ.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so yeah, earlier Ra had said that the Confederation of Planets that they're a part of is made up of, sort of represents 500 different planets. And what's interesting is that those 500 planets seem to be connected to only 7 star systems, which is surprising. I wonder if there's a star system that just has hundreds of planets. I don't know. And then they had to clear up some confusion because they used the word galaxy in the context that we would say star system or solar system. And that has come up, that happened a few times in the past and was a little confusing to Don, but they got it squared away. So any questions or comments or thoughts about any of that?
I have something to say.
Mm-hmm.
I never really digested the piece about the Confederation before, about how there's like, okay, so I understand how social memory complex can share information among themselves, like there's no veil.
Mm-hmm.
But then they say each voluntarily placed the social memory complex data in what you may consider a central thought complex available to all. So like several social memory complexes are sharing information. And I just never really like took my thought process beyond like, oh, well, once there's no veil, does that just mean there's no veil between your social memory complex? Like, or then all of a sudden, like let's say we're suddenly in 4D and we can share thoughts. Are we also sharing thoughts with, if there were 4D entities on a planet that was close by, would we also be sharing thoughts? Would there be no veil between us? Like that nuance never occurred to me before. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's just interesting to have this little clue of like they had to do a thing to share data between social memory complexes.
Right. Yep. Does seem so.
They placed the data.
So if you're part of let's say humanity forms a social memory complex. So when we go to 4D, we don't automatically form a social memory complex, right? I think we made that distinction, right?
I think that's my sense, yeah.
Right, so the social memory complex has to be voluntarily formed. And once you're in that social memory complex, you get access to the information, the Akashic records, I guess, is our latent social memory complex, which is all the information. So there's some action. So it doesn't seem automatic, right?
Yep.
So in that same sense, you can't just automatically access information from other social memory complexes, right? There's something that has to be done, which is this. It seems like there is a voluntary step required to form the social memory complex so that one can access that information, which seems to, both in our earlier discussion and what Ra's saying now seems to confirm that, which is like, you don't just get free access to all the information. That seems to be a seventh density thing. Where like, no, I know everything. I'm the creator.
Right.
But in fourth density, there is a lifting of the veil in that you can see people's intentions, but that seems to be different from accessing the collective knowledge so that some race has. Does that sound right?
Everything you just said sounds how I mean, that's kind of how the sense I make of it too. Yep. Amanda.
So what are the densities of the 500 the 500 different entities that are in the Confederation?
It would be mostly fourth and fifth density and some sixth, and then maybe even a very few number of third. Like Ra at one point says that some third density planets get their shit together so quickly that they're actually able to form a social memory complex in third density. So that does happen. So it's possible that there's like a smattering of third, probably mostly fourth and fifth, and then some sixth.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's funny that you just referred to soul evolution as getting their shit together.
I agree with that. Hey, I have a question about this. Well, I have two questions.
Mhm.
Okay, so first one is this 4%.
Right.
Is that the same 4% from before of like, so oh God, where was it? The
Yeah.
one where like there's some unknown part there.
Right. Well, they were giving like the percentages of like the breakdown of how many of all the cycling planets, what densities are they in? And they gave that breakdown, and then they injected this sort of mysterious, well, we can't talk about beyond fifth. We can't really talk about the percentages. And then there are these other, there was two sort of mysterious aspects to them breaking that down. So then here in 1632, they say, thus those percentiles of planetary entities plus approximately 4% more of whose identity we cannot speak. And it's not the same percentages. They don't say 4%. That's a different percentage of the other entities they couldn't speak of. So I don't know if it's the same like group or the same reason, but it sure did pique my interest. Like, why can't they talk about that? And who are they?
I was I don't want to get off topic here, but I was thinking about so it's 1627. There's a fairly large percentage, approximately 35% of intelligent planets, which do not fit in the percentiles. Do not fit within the percentiles. That doesn't mean why wouldn't it fit in the percentiles?
I know. Well, and if you do the math, just the simple math, it's a different number, I think. I did this last week. 17 plus 20 plus 27.
86.
Right. All right. So there's 86% is accounted for in their telling. But then they say 35 don't fit. It's like, what? 35% of what? So, and again, it could be the math thing. They do say over and over again that they have a difficult time with our numbering system. All these are some pretty simple numbers. You'd think that this would be handleable. But
If I may,
yeah.
if I may, I think that 35% is of all the planets, those who are, what was the word you used there?
Cycling or intelligent. They say intelligent planets.
Right. Yeah. So the 35% is out of all the planets, even those that are not going through the densities. And then in the first paragraph, I think they're giving the percentages of only those planets that are going through the densities.
Mm-hmm.
So the 35% is not part of what they're listing above. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And the issue there, though, is that, all right, so the Milky Way galaxy is supposed to have like 200 billion or between 200 and 250 billion stars in it. So, and then in 1626, they say, Don's question is roughly how many total planets in this galaxy of stars that we're in have aware life, regardless of density? So these would be the cycling planets. And then Ross says approximately 67 million.
Right.
Like that's a very small percentage of the planets that are probably in the galaxy. Very small. Now, maybe they got that number wrong because, they have a hard time with numbers. So maybe that's supposed to be 67 billion.
Right.
But that's an incredibly small percentage of all the planets that are in the Milky Way galaxy. It would be very surprising to me to learn that only 67 million planets are cycling of how many hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of billions of planets that are in the galaxy.
Right.
So
yeah, because before that he says 1/5 of planetary entities contain awareness, right?
Right.
So when he says 35% of intelligent planets do not fit into the percentiles, does that mean they are intelligent, but not cycling, or just intelligent, but you can't isolate them to one density? Okay, obviously we don't know, right?
Yeah, we don't know. Well, it brings to mind Saturn, because in another session, Ra said, or Don asks Ra, in our solar system, which of the planets are cycling? Which of the planets either have or maybe will produce the cycling and the densities? And it's not all of them. And they say that Saturn is basically, it's kind of the octave, like it's at the eighth level, like the council that's occupying Saturn, I think they say, is at the 8th level. But they don't name it as one of the planets that sponsored cycling life. So that's what comes to mind in terms of these mysterious, numbers, the percentages, whether it's 35 or the 4% that we just read. Like, it might have to do with there's planets that kind of like become hubs or stations for like octave entities, from entities who are from the next octave or something, to come and station on the planet. Even though the planet's not cycling through the densities, it may serve as a hub or a base for guardian entities or entities from the next octave, or some kind of entity that Ra is not free to speak of, because there's some function that they're serving that's supposed to be mystery clad, and to tell us that might somehow interfere with our free will. That's just a guess. I mean, I don't know.
But 4% of them are willing to form in social memory complex, apparently, right? Is that the right interpretation here? Like,
well,
the Confederation.
4% of entities who are in the Confederation doesn't necessarily mean 4% of entities who choose to form a social memory complex. Like, that 4% of entities, the way I read their answers, it's 4% of the entities who are members of the Confederation. That doesn't necessarily mean it's 4% of entities who are social memory complexes. Right? Does that make sense?
What section is that?
The very first one we read. So 1632, Don's question is, can you tell me how the Confederation of Planets was formed and why? And Ross says, the desire to serve begins in the dimension of love, so fourth density, to be an overwhelming goal of the social memory complex. Thus, those percentiles of planetary entities plus approximately 4% more whose identity we cannot speak. So that extra 4% may not be social memory complexes.
Right. I'm saying that those 4% are these. Those 4% are the mystery 35, come from the 35% of mystery beings.
Maybe, yeah, maybe. They seem to be part of some post fifth density group of entities that's either 6th or 7th or higher, or of the octave, that for some reason are mystery clad and are supposed to be, from Ra's perspective.
Let's see. And what was okay? I'm done with this topic unless you guys want to talk about it more.
Anything else on this one? Okay, go ahead. Move on.
There was something about it. What was the thing about the number seeming small, that it only served 7 galaxies, but it was 500 planets? Was that do you mind just restating that, Aaron?
Sure. Yeah, in a previous session, and I don't know if it's easy for anybody to look this up. Probably isn't for me while I'm facilitating, but in a previous session, Don had asked Ra to describe how many members are a part of the Confederation of Planets, and Ra's response was basically 500 planetary entities are part of the group, and they belong to 7 solar systems, I believe. And what was surprising to me about that is, like, that's so many planets for so few stars.
It says there are many confederations. This confederation works with the planetary spheres of 7 of your galaxies. Could it be that there's a difference between like they're not coming from these 7 galaxies? These are the 7 galaxies that they're charged with helping.
Possibly. Yeah, possibly. Which did you find the session that they?
No. I'm saying I believe you with the original 500. I think that sounds right. They're saying like they're 500. I also remember something about like most of them come from one planet. There's a few social memory complex that span multiple planets. But here on 1633, this confederation works with the planetary spheres of 7 of your galaxies. I'm interpreting that as not that the confederation members all come from 7 galaxies. It's that this specific confederation is currently focused on helping 7 solar systems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it
So
still
that
doesn't
should
really resolve for me. Like, I wonder what the significance of naming this, that there are 7 stars. I wish I could find it. I'm trying to find it, but it's hard for me to do both. Anyway, I don't know how important it is.
no, I mean on 1633, right? It says you say there are approximately 500 confederation planets. That seems to me to be a relatively small percentage of the total. Okay. I mean, I guess what I'm saying is Ra doesn't specifically say that the 500 planets are coming from 7 galaxies, right?
Well, I don't know, because I don't remember where I read that.
It's 1633.
Oh. Somehow I thought that they were, Don was picking up from a previous session where they had actually originally said that, but yeah.
Anyways, it's not important. I heard that in passing and I wanted to make sure I caught it correctly.
Does anyone else remember, or is anyone else able to? Anyway, never mind. We can move on. I was trying to find it. I'm pretty sure in a previous session, not 16, in a previous session, they say the makeup of the Confederation, and they say both 500 planets, but they also say 7 star systems, but they call them galaxies. And I'm just, it's relevant to what we're talking about now, but I can't find it quickly and easily. So,
in 624, they said there are approximately 53 civilizations comprising approximately 500 planetary consciousness complexes in this confederation.
there we go. That's it. And you said that's, what is it again?
624.
Mm-hmm. Aha. So yeah, Ross says, I am one of the members of the Confederation of Planets in the service of the infinite creator. There are approximately 53 civilizations comprising approximately 500 planetary consciousness complexes in this confederation. This confederation contains those from your own planet who have attained dimensions beyond your third. It contains planetary entities within your solar system, and it contains planetary entities from other galaxies. And then somewhere, I think they say the other galaxies, there are, galaxies meaning solar systems, there are 7 of them. But again, cool. Thanks, BJ. Thanks for finding that. That's helpful.
Yeah.
Right. So some of the civilizations are multiplanetary civilizations, because there's only 53 civilizations representing 500 planets. That means some of them are multiplanetary civilizations. That's interesting. I mean, in terms of like how applicable is any of this to our own spiritual paths, very little, I think. However, the thing that some of these conversations about multiplanetary and multi-solar systems, it broadens my own conceptualization of the creation and the creator And it just, it sort of, it feels like it tilts my thinking towards cosmic consciousness, towards cosmic awareness. Like it's kind of like if you've only ever been in your own country or your own culture and you travel the world to a very different place and a very different culture, it just helps you have a broader perspective on life. Well, this does that on a whole different level for me. When I think about all these other realities beyond our planet, it humbles me, and it helps me just like, whatever, be more open to the mystery of things. So that's to me, that's kind of the point anyway. And it's kind of interesting, and it's especially kind of interesting these days because there's so much happening in our mass consciousness right now about disclosure and UFOs and UAPs, and like that conversation is just continues to gain a lot of awareness in the mass mind, and so it does become a little bit more relevant to like have a bit of a context for some of these broader exopolitical facts, I guess. Did we get to your question, Sean? Were you able to say it and give any feedback on it? Okay. Okay, shall we move on? Okay. So
1637, I think.
37. Anyone want to read from 1637? Go ahead.
I can read. Oh, never mind.
We'll go Amanda first, and then you next, Sean.
Questioner, can you tell me the progression of life in the other galaxies is similar to the progression in this one? I am Ra. The progression is somewhat close to the same, asymptotically approaching congruency throughout infinity. The free choosing of what you call galactic systems causes variations of an extremely minor nature from one of your galaxies to another. That word is being defined as infinitely approaching a given value. Okay. Questioner. And then the law of one is truly universal in creating the progression toward the 8th density or octave in all galaxies. Is this correct? I am Ra. This is correct. There are infinite forms, infinite understandings, but the progression is one. Questioner. I am assuming it is not necessary for an individual to understand the law of one to go from 3rd density to 4th density. Is this correct? I am Ra. It is absolutely necessary that an entity consciously realize it does not understand in order for it to be harvestable. Understanding is not of this density. Questioner. That is a very important point. I used the wrong word. What I meant to say was, I believe that it is not necessary for an entity to be consciously aware of the law of one to go from 3rd density to 4th density. I am Ra. This is correct. Questioner. At what point in the densities is it necessary for an entity to be consciously aware of the law of one to progress? I am Ra. The 5th density harvest is of those whose vibratory distortions consciously accept the honor duty of the law of one. This responsibility, honor, is the foundation of this vibration.
One more?
Yeah. Can you tell me a little more about this honor responsibility concept? I am Ra. Each responsibility is an honor. Each honor, a responsibility.
Okay, thanks. We'll pause there.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, please do.
1641, the fifth density harvest. Is that going from fourth to fifth or fifth to sixth?
I think it's going from fifth to sixth.
I think so too.
Mhm.
And then further, I think the last sentence that Ra says, this responsibility honor is the foundation of this vibration. I think they mean sixth density. Like they, when they describe themselves, they say, we are those of the law of one.
Of the love one, yeah.
And they mean that we are sixth density entities, basically. And
Right.
so I think like the harvest from fifth density is basically like consciously saying like, okay, I'm ready to live the law of one. I'm ready to be, not only am I aware of it, consciously aware of the law of one, I'm ready to enter into that state of being. That's how I take that. So why do you all think Ra says, this is pretty strong language from Ra to say, it is absolutely necessary that an entity consciously realize it does not understand in order for it to be harvestable from third to fifth.
Third to fourth.
Sorry, third to fifth. Third to fourth. What do y'all think about that?
I have thoughts about that.
Let's hear it.
I think the function of the finite mind in third density is what creates the veil, or vice versa. The veil is created by the function of the finite mind. And I think it's really important, as far as I can tell, in this, in this third density illusion, to be able to see beyond the limits and the confines of the finite mind, and to me that's practicing faith. So and faith is something that's really important to progress in third density, is to cultivate faith and to not, to be able to utilize the capacities of knowing that are beyond what our minds tell us, which I think also takes a lot of humility. So that's my take.
Yep. Makes a lot of sense. Any other thoughts on that? Hint?
I mean, yeah, it's kind of elaborating on what BJ said. So it's like embracing the mysteries that, not all is to be understood.
Right.
And having that humility or humbleness that, there are things that we are not able to understand in third density.
Yep.
Which makes me at least wonder about, atheists who believe we live in a purely physical universe and that everything can be explained. So an atheist might not consciously realize that it does not understand, because they might think that everything can be explained and everything can be understood.
Yeah. Yeah, I resonate with both what you two said. And then just to kind of build upon it, what the sense that I get is that metaphysically, Ra talks about evolution being following the upward spiral, back to infinity, back to oneness. And it's analogous to seeking. They also call it seeking. Spiritual seeking is kind of like consciously moving upward along that the spiral of light. And I think that gesture metaphysically is driven by like being open to the mystery. It's driven by faith. It's driven by curiosity. It's driven by desire to know the truth. And if you think you know everything, if you think you know everything there is to know, and you, then you know it kind of closes off that impulse to seek,
Mhm.
that impulse to be leaning into the mystery. And so I can see why they would say that it's important, it's critical to have a posture of, I'm willing to learn, I'm willing to grow, I'm willing to discover what I don't know yet. And yeah, you can sort of see all that.
Mhm.
I think you can be atheist and still not from talking to atheists, I think their faith comes not in the form of like something unknown, like spiritually. It's like to in a sense, it's like the service to others in the form of atheism is almost like a faith in humanity, of like hoping that humanity, like working towards a better future for humanity, knowing that they're going to die and not see it, in a sense.
Mhm.
I don't know.
Yeah, I resonate with that, Shong. I don't think it's necessarily all atheists, hold a posture of, not having curiosity or not, thinking they know everything. I could see that for sure. I don't know a lot of atheists. I used to be one, but I don't talk to a lot of atheists these days.
Mhm.
I have a follow-up question.
Yeah, I have a very good friend.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. I'm lagging.
Go ahead, Shang. Yeah, okay. No, yeah, I was just going to say I have a very good friend in Sweden who's an atheist. He's my best friend from high school. And yeah, he has a big heart, and he cares about people. So I didn't mean to put atheists down. I was just giving that as an example of and of course he knows that he doesn't know everything, but he believes that there aren't any spiritual mysteries to existence. It's a physical universe, so there's an explanation for everything, even though he doesn't necessarily himself have the explanation. A materialistic explanation for everything. I mean, even though he doesn't have that,
Right.
all of them himself. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, atheists can have a lot of love and a big heart. He certainly does.
Yeah.
But is that all that is needed for graduation from third to fourth? I don't know.
I want
That's a
to read
mystery.
Yuri's comment. Yuri dropped a comment and it says, I believe one has to develop acceptance in third density, which leads to love, the lesson of this density. So we have to learn to accept, not to seek for understanding. That's Yuri's comment.
That's a good point.
The original question that you guys were talking about was why is it important to make sure an entity doesn't be consciously aware that there, or is it it is absolutely necessary that the entity consciously realize it does not understand the law of one. I just wanted to get a better grasp of like, what does it actually mean to understand the law of one in this context? Like, it seems this is this specific wording when Ra is referring to it seems to, Ra's definition of understanding the law of one seems to be the criteria to go from fifth to sixth. So in that sense, does that mean like you are consciously aware and living the reality that there's no separation between self and other self? Is that the definition here of understanding the law of one? Like day to day, like I see another person and I'm like, hey, that's an extension of me. Like, and it's literally my reality. Everyone I see and everything Is that what it means to understand the law of one here?
I think that's the biggest part of it. But when Ra defined the law of one, they also included the knowledge that there is no right or wrong, the knowledge that there is no polarity, there is no, there is no separation in the universe. It's all one entity. So to completely grok and experience from moment to moment the singular entityness of everything, all people, all phenomena, all experiences, and to not have any, illusion left in separation or something like that. Seems like, yeah. But I think the core of it is what you said, Sean. The core of it is, seeing everything as yourself and as the creator.
And as a follow-up, that starts to make sense why it would be so jarring for a fifth density negative to like suddenly come to that realization. And I guess that explains the confusion in early sixth density for negatives.
Well,
Yeah.
but it also deepens the mystery of like, how does a negative entity even make that threshold? How do they consciously accept the honor responsibility of the law of one while on the negative path? Like, that's mysterious to me.
It's almost like in fifth, the fifth is the light density where you learn the secrets of the universe, right?
Right.
And at some point, like once you've known enough, you just realize it just clicks of like, oh shit, like it was all one this whole time.
Right.
And I guess that launches them to six. And then they realize like everything is not what they thought.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think I don't put a lot of thought into the negative path, but it seems as though to me there has to be some way that there's an understanding of spiritual power through recognizing how I am the creator or whatever, but then it becomes literal, like I am the creator and you're not the creator or something like that. So I think there is some way of leaning into oneness, even on the negative path, but it's just a self-centered kind of oneness. I think that's at least how I conceptualize it.
Yeah. Well, and it's a paradox, the paradox of what it's like to be on a positive or a negative path prior to sixth density. It's the same path. Ross says there is no path that doesn't serve the creator. There is no activity that doesn't serve the creator. Everything serves the creator. There's only one of us here. So it's just a paradox, it's just a paradox. And it's a paradox that's not resolved until sixth density. So there's
like tapping into the power of oneness for the purpose of serving the self.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I think that a lot of the, oh, sorry. I think you're a little choppy and I talked over you. And
I think I think those on the negative path might have an understanding that they came from oneness. I was going to say, yeah, but yeah, they probably are aware that they came from oneness, but they don't want to go back to it. They want to. I think they have fear of that they will be if they go back to oneness, that their individual selves will be lost if they go back to oneness. The way I see it, going back towards and becoming more, going back to oneness would mean they would lose themselves.
Right.
Which I think they fear.
Yep. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. I think you're right on.
Am I still connected?
Yeah. It's a little shaky, but it all came through.
you with me?
Yep.
Okay, good.
Yeah, that all
I
came
thought
through.
I got disconnected.
Mhm. We're both with you technologically and also conceptually.
Okay, good.
I want to
Okay,
read your,
great.
I want to read Yuri's comment. He says,
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe is about going beyond duality. And this is why negative entities have to change the polarity. Change polarity.
Mhm.
Maybe we'll keep reading.
Let me just scan. I think there was one thing I wanted to say. Well, I just wanted to kind of underscore Ra's statement that the progression of life is very congruent across all, galaxies. And there is difference, like each galaxy, they say the free choosing of what you call galactic systems causes variations of an extremely minor nature from one of your galaxies to another. Now, you sort of have to parse whether or not they're using galaxies in the way we use galaxies, or whether they're really referring to solar systems, because I do remember that at one point, Don asked them to comment on some of their experience of other galactic systems, and they said it was profound and mind-boggling. They said like the form of life in other galaxies, like boggles the imagination or something like that. So I wonder if the subtle differences are actually from star to star within a galaxy, but from galaxy to galaxy, the changes are a little bit more major. I mean, I'm not challenging the essential idea of this question. The progression is, the progression of life throughout the universe, I imagine, is, unfolds in a fairly similar pattern. But in 1637, when they say the free choosing of what you call galactic systems causes variations of an extremely minor nature from one of your galaxies to another, seems a little different than what they said in another point in the teachings, where they say that they have visited other galaxies and the experience, like, I forget how they said it, but it was pretty strong. They're like, it boggles the conceptual faculties to describe, or something like that. Does anyone remember what I'm referring to?
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. So anyway, they might actually be doing the same thing, where they're calling a galactic system a solar system again.
But could
anyway.
it be that like the life form like the forms of life and how life is expressed is like anything imaginable plus beyond that, but the progression system stays the same?
Yeah, very much could be that. Absolutely.
Like they all go through. I guess it would be like, regardless of where you are in this universe, it's always going to be the same 7 densities.
Yeah.
Regardless of how crazy the life form is.
Yep. That makes sense. And I remember
With
they said
minor variations. Like, what kind of minor variations?
Well, do you remember when they said that like life will form around whatever chemical complexes are available? Like here we are in our, in our solar system, it's all about carbon and hydrocarbons. But they said that like life will use whatever chemicals are available, whatever elements are available, they'll use that to assemble biological life. So, there, and we know even on Earth, there's like phosphorus-based life forms at the bottom of the ocean, and there are other, kind of like fundamental building blocks of biological life even here. But that could have to do with it. There may be some biological systems of life that are based on silicone, or they're based on whatever. Who knows? I thought it was fascinating. It wasn't in this session, but at one point they said that life will just use the materials available to assemble vehicles so that it can inspire it, so that it can explore, being a part of the universe and evolving through it. That was pretty cool. Okay, I am ready to move on now. So I think we're picking up at 1643. Sean?
I may have to move.
Okay.
Can someone else read?
Sure. I'll read this one. Okay, 1643. Questioner, I want to ask a rather questionable question. I may not put it in the book. I was wondering if cattle mutilations that we now experience across the country and elsewhere could be explained by you. I am Ra. The greater part of your so-called mutilations take place according to the ways of your second density beings, which feed upon carrion. A portion of these so-called mutilations are those which are of what you may call multi-dimensional type, a thought form, construct, using various parts in order to have life and being in third density. Questioner, where do these thought forms come from? I am Ra. This is a very ambiguous question. However, we will attempt to answer. Firstly, they come from the Creator. Secondly, they come from what you may call lower astral, inner plane thought. Thirdly, in construct visualization complex, they reside in part beneath the crust of your planet. Questioner, are these one form in particular? Ra, I am Ra. These entities may take any thought form associated with an emotion of fear or terror. Questioner, are these thought forms able to attack only cattle, or can they also attack human beings? I am Ra. These thought forms cannot attack third density beings. I don't think we'll spend much time on this, but if anyone has any comments or questions, we can field them. I'll say one thing, which is, like I have seen, in my kind of like, whatever, the last 8 or 10 years of exploring esoteric information, I've seen reference to cattle mutilations. And I saw some old photographs and stuff, and it seemed to have like taken a backdrop or died down, or at least they weren't getting reported as much. But then pretty recently, over the past year, I've seen some modern accounts in the United States of this happening with some like more high definition photographs, and photography equipment that's available now is obviously closer at hand than it used to be in the 70s or whatever. And one of the things that marks these occurrences as unique and mysterious is that the impact to the body of the animal is surgically precise. Like there's these very strange, like it seems impossible that it was carrion, or that it was like a vulture or a wolf or a second density entity. Like there's these very strange extractions. Anyway, again, I'm not trying to get too much into it, but there seems to have been a resurgence in either the phenomenon or the reporting of the phenomenon more recently. And yeah, seems to involve lower astral creatures. Moving on.
Section 6. Yeah. 1643. At the bottom, a portion of these so-called mutilations are those which are of what you may call multidimensional type, a thought form construct using various parts in order to have life and being in third density. So then it's as under 1646, Ra says, these thought forms cannot attack third density beings. So they don't mutilate third density beings. But they do have participate in third density. The thought, what does that mean to you all? That they have life and being in third density.
My, if I was to have to take a guess about what's up with these entities, I would say that they are created by negative third or higher densities beings. Because my understanding of a thought form entity is it's an entity that hasn't evolved in the normal progression through the densities. It's generated by the power of mind of an entity, of an evolving entity. So it seems like someone thought these entities into form, thought these entities into being, and programmed them to to empower fear and terror. These entities may take any thought form associated with an emotion of fear or terror. So it seems to suggest that there's a what am I trying to say? There's a plan. There's a reason for their programming. There's a reason they were caused to come into being, and it seems like a pretty negative agenda. And so it just spreads fear throughout the population.
So they do interact with the third density beings by instilling fear and terror in third density beings.
Right.
But they don't mutilate third density beings.
Right. Yeah. So the farmer comes back to the field and finds their cattle, and then, how do they make sense of that? What's the impact on them? How does it, and then they take a picture and then they share it in the news, and that, you know what I mean? Like it spreads through the storytelling and the people trying to make sense of what happened.
Right.
Did they say if it was humans that created the thoughts? They didn't say.
They didn't say.
Okay.
And it's possible that humans did. It's possible that it wasn't like an Orion entity or something. It's possible that it's just the unprocessed fear and terror of humanity that created them. That seems like a very realistic possibility too.
Right.
So the takeaway there is we can contribute positively to the cattle mutilation phenomenon by processing our fear and terror.
Right.
Integrate it, heal it, figure it out. Okay, shall we move on? Okay. Silver Flex, 1648. Anybody want to read?
1647, right?
Yes, thank you. 1647. Sorry.
I'll read.
Okay.
Thank you. Can you tell me of the silver flecks that we have found sometimes on our faces or elsewhere? I am Ra. These of which you speak are a materialization of a subjectively oriented signpost, indicating to one mind-body-spirit complex and no other, a meaning of subjective nature. Questioner, who creates the silver flecks? Are they real? I am Ra. Picture, if you will, the increasing potential for learned teaching. At some point, a sign will be given to indicate the appropriateness or importance of that learned teaching. The entity itself, in cooperation with the inner planes, creates whatever signpost is most understandable or noticeable to it. Questioner, you're saying that we ourselves then create these? I am Ra. Entities consciously do not create these. The roots of mind complex, having touched in understanding intelligent infinity, create them.
We got to hear from Gary and Austin directly a little bit about these, and I think we saw them, or at least a picture of them, because we went to visit LL.
I think what happened is we had found some glitter or something, and Gary said this is almost exactly like the silver flecks or something like that. That's the way I remember it. Anyway,
I forgot that part. No, it's okay. I think I need help remembering. I don't often remember things as well as you do, BJ. But my understanding of the, and translation of what they just discussed was like they're basically like a mysterious semi-miraculous manifestation that was co-designed by their higher selves and the deep mind to like help them know that they're on the right track, like to give them like this physical sign of like keep going, keep investigating the mystery, something like that. Like it was a little gift, a little magical gift from them, from their inner selves to their outer selves. And I thought Gary had said that they had made available the photographs of the flecks. I tried to look real quick on their website to see if we could pull them up, but anyway, they look like silver flecks. They're like hexagonal, right? They're like, they look a little bit like sequins, like hexagonal sequins or something, but very thin.
Yeah.
I was out in the woods hiking with a month or two ago. And we speculate they're releasing metal specks of metal. They weren't as big as what they're talking about here, I don't think. Anyway.
You were out hiking in the woods with a friend and something about metal.
Yeah, we saw these silver specks or metal-colored specks all over the leaves and the vegetation. For the whole hike, basically. And we were speculating that they might be from the chemtrails. But
they weren't mica?
No, mica wouldn't be sprinkled all over all the leaves like that.
Mm.
They were like covering, all over the leaves, all the different plants, the trees, the smaller plants, everything.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. But these were tiny flecks.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's carry on. 1650. I'll take another turn. Questioner, thank you. Is it possible for you to give a small description of the conditions in fourth density? I am Ra. We ask you to consider, as we speak, that there are no words for positively describing fourth density. We can only explain what is not and approximate what is. Beyond fourth density, our ability grows more limited still, until we become without words. That which fourth density is not. It is not of words, unless chosen. It is not of heavy chemical vehicles for body complex activities. It is not of disharmony within self. It is not of disharmony within peoples. It is not within limits of possibility to cause disharmony in any way. Approximations of positive statements. It is a plane of a type of bipedal vehicle which is much denser and more full of life. It is a plane wherein one is aware of the thoughts of other selves. It is a plane where one is aware of the vibrations of other selves. It is a plane of compassion and understanding of the sorrows of third density. It is a plane striving towards wisdom or light. It is a plane wherein individual differences are pronounced, although automatically harmonized by group consensus. Questioner, could you define the word density as we have been using it to give us a little greater idea of the concept of this term when used by you? I am Ra. The term density is what you would call, mathematical one. The closest analogy is that of music, whereby after 7 notes on your Western type of scale, if you will, the 8th note begins a new octave. Within your great octave of existence, which we share with you, there are 7 octaves or densities. Within each density, there are 7 subdensities. Within each subdensity, 7 sub-subdensities, and so on, infinitely. Questioner, I notice that the time we have used has gone slightly over an hour. I would prefer to continue, but I want to ask at this time as to the condition of the instrument. I am Ra. This instrument is in balance. It is well to continue if you desire. Questioner, all right. Continuing with what we were just talking about, namely densities. I understand, then, that each density has 7 subdensities, which again have 7 subdensities, which again have 7 subdensities. This expands at an extremely large rate as things are increased in powers of 7. Does this mean that in any density level, anything that you can think of is happening? And many things that you never thought of are happening? Everything is happening? This is confusing. I am Ra. From your confusion, we select the concept with which you struggle, that being infinite opportunity. You may consider any possibility-probability complex as having an existence. Questioner, does what we do when we think of possibilities that can occur, say daydreaming, do these become real in these densities? I am Ra. This depends upon the nature of the daydream. This is a large subject. Perhaps the simplest thing we can say is if the daydream, as you call it, is one which attracts to self, this then becomes reality to self. If it is contemplative, general daydream, this may enter the infinity of possibility-probability complexes and occur elsewhere, having no particular attachment to the energy fields of the creator. Questioner, to make this a little more clear, if I were to daydream strongly about building a ship, would this occur in one of these other densities? I am Ra. This would have, or shall occur. Questioner, if then if, say, an entity daydreams strongly about battling, let us say, another entity, would this occur? I am Ra. In this case, the entity's fantasy concerns the self and other self. This binds the thought form to the possibility-probability complex connected with the self, which is the creator of this thought form. This then would increase the probability of bringing this into third density occurrence. Questioner, does the Orion group use this principle to create conditions brought about to suit their purpose? I am Ra. We will answer more specifically than the question. The Orion group uses daydreams of hostile or other negative vibratory natures to feedback or strengthen these thought forms. Questioner, do they ever use any, shall I say, gratifications of the physical body to amplify such daydreams? I am Ra. They are able to do this only when there is a strong ability on the part of the receiving mind-body-spirit complex towards the perception of thought forms. This could be termed an unusual characteristic, but has indeed been a method used by Orion entities. I'll pause there. Does anybody want to take a pass at explaining or describing your understanding of the kind of infinite possibilities, probabilities, and the densities? Any thoughts about any of that? Or just generally any questions? Amanda?
So in learning the Akashic records, we learn when we tap in, what my understanding is and the way that I was taught was that when we tap into the Akashic records, we're tapping into all timelines of all probabilities and possibilities. So when people ask questions about their future, that we go into like what is the most probable or possible timeline, but there are so many, right? So it's sort of what I gather is that, well, the universe is infinite, and so everything is happening in all possibilities and probabilities.
Yep. Yeah, that makes sense to me. And to me it introduces the relevance of the term time, space, and space-time. Because as I understand it, space-time is that which is in form, that which has been given a body, that which has physical existence, that which has kind of a shared, it's part of our shared reality. And time-space is sort of like, it's called the spiritual realm. And it's sort of like the unmanifest. It's invisible, but it relates strongly to just like what is contained in the either personal or collective mind that has not yet come into form. And I think, each density has both a space-time and a time-space component to it. So each density has both a manifest version and an unmanifest version. So anything anyone daydreams about, a daydream kind of takes place in time-space. It doesn't take place in space-time. It doesn't have a form. So yeah, I think everything that can be daydreamed or thought of or conceived of would exist in time-space. And if it gains enough like relevance or interest or desire, either to a person or to a group, then eventually it will manifest. Because we're all creators, we're all co-creating space-time together with God, so God and the Logos kind of creates the basic, conditions of Earth and the sun and all of first and second density life. And then we come onto the scene with our own creative capacities, and then we co-create within that. And so, yeah, it's a pretty rich, topic,
Hey, quick follow-up on that. So,
Yeah.
Is the interpretation here when Ross is like, when you think of something and you really care about it, it's going to happen. He's implying that it's going to happen in time space, not necessarily in space time. Is that I guess what I'm trying to get here is like, the other interpretation is like there's an infinite number of parallel realities going on, right? And everything's happening, and these are space-time parallel realities. But what we're talking about here is not necessarily that like there's an infinite Aarons and infinite Chongs and infinite Amandas, like in parallel space times. What we're sort of how we're interpreting it is when you think about something, it happens in time space, which is sort of the unmanifested, all the potentials. Not necessarily that there's a bunch of different parallel us living everything out. Is that sort of?
It's a great question, Sean. I think this is a really highly contested topic in metaphysics and spirituality. Like some people, really think that there's like infinite parallel timelines and everything happens in space-time. Like there's literally infinite Aarons and Chongs, etc. I don't know if that's correct or incorrect. That's not how I see it. I think a lot of these infinite parallels occur in time-space, not in space-time. And my sense is that once you hit a certain point in evolution where Ra is at, they're able to see in a nonlinear way. They're able to see time in a nonlinear way, and so it's like it's simultaneous to them. So like there are parallel realities like for Aaron, but it just means that I will have incarnated by the time I finish the whole thing. I will have incarnated whatever, thousands, hundreds of thousands of times. And on some level, that's all happening simultaneously, like from a higher density. And so that can kind of seem like there's infinite parallel realities, but from our perspective, they actually are happening sequentially. Like I'm in this incarnation now. I have had incarnations in the past. I will have incarnations in the future. And so from my perspective, there's lots and lots and lots of timelines, but they are kind of unfolding in a orderly way. So, but I don't know. It might be true. So a lot of people, I've talked to a lot of people who believe that like there's infinite parallel realities and everything is happening all at once or whatever. That's not exactly how I make sense of it all, but who knows?
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks.
I just want to interject super quick. Have you all seen that movie, Everything Everywhere All at Once?
Yeah.
I'm getting all of these images in my mind from this conversation. It's so good.
Mhm.
Yeah, super creative movie. I wouldn't recommend it to everybody. I probably wouldn't. For a minute, I tried to like figure out if I should recommend it to BJ or not, but I decided not to because it's got some pretty. It's not all very palatable. Good movie though, very creative.
I want to
Great.
change the topic.
Go for it.
I'm interested in the descriptions of fourth density. Particularly, where does it? Oh, I had it and then I lost it.
1650.
It is not within limits of possibility to cause disharmony in any way. That's so fascinating.
Mhm.
Do y'all have a way of making sense of that?
Yeah, aren't there wars? Aren't there wars between positive and negative? Wasn't there a war in the heavens? Like that seems disharmonious to me.
Yeah, it does. I was thinking they were talking about within a social memory complex. But yeah, I mean, we have heard about the war in the heavens between negatives and positives.
Yep. I had the same issue, you guys. I had the same problem making sense of that. Because again, like I think I mentioned this last week or a couple weeks ago, we got to listen to a quote channeling where they reported about their feelings about the war between the positive and negative entities in fourth density. And there seemed to be an incredible amount of sorrow about it. it didn't seem like a harmonious experience of war at fourth density, at the level of fourth density. It seemed like, from their perspective, they really wished it wasn't necessary.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So that's an interesting, discussion. And specifically, I do take it to mean that they say it's not of disharmony within peoples. And so I take that to mean it's not within the limits of possibility to cause disharmony within peoples, within a social memory complex in any way. And that's what I was pointing to, is like, does that, like, for me, that's like, whoa, that just feels like a whole, I want to sit in that meditation or something, like, and just curious if that statement does anything for you, or it is not within limits of possibility to cause disharmony in any way. Like, I just feel like I want to contemplate that state of being. That just feels like that's fascinating.
Well, just to add to that, in the next paragraph, they say it is a plane wherein individual differences are pronounced, although automatically harmonized by group consensus. So
Right.
it's not like everyone becomes the same. Actually, we all become more unique and more essentially ourselves.
Right.
And in the context of fourth density, it's harmonized. It doesn't create more disharmony. It's all in the context of harmony.
Right. And Yuri says he believes it's about not being able to deceive anyone. Everything is open.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Which that totally makes sense to me. And like, it still seems as though, just to my frame of mind, even if I wasn't able to be deceived, like, I can still, in this density right now, conceive of disharmony. Anyway, I'm going to sit with that one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like what does disharmony refer to here? Like, this would also apply to negative social memory complexes, right? So
Right.
like, they're all about conquering each other and everyone around them. There's some pecking order, and yet there's no disharmony within them. Like,
Yeah.
is this because, I guess, everyone, it's really clear where everyone stands? Maybe that's what it comes down to. Like, it's just really clear where everyone stands and where everyone is. And just because of that, everything sort of just naturally resolves itself without it having to manifest into like overt. Like,
Yes.
what would be the difference between fourth and third in that situation? Like in third density, you have like some ruthless company, and then a new guy comes in, and there's probably some massive internal fighting. But in fourth density, some new guy is well, first they would probably see that their intentions, and then if they decide to let him in, they will just know where he fits, right? Is that? Sorry, yeah, go ahead.
Well, what's occurring to me about it now is like it's reminding me of something that one of my teachers talks about, that's like, every breakup is mutual. And like, I got distracted because Zoom started doing something for me. It's weird. That like, if Shang and I are in a relationship, and then Shang doesn't want to be in the relationship anymore, if I know that Shang doesn't want to be in the relationship anymore, and I understand that, I wouldn't want to be in the relationship with Shang either, because I want what's best for Shang. Anyway, that's just a piece of it that I feel like is making sense to me. Like, if we actually know what one another wants, it seems like maybe there's always mutual desire. Like, we always want the same thing because we always want the other entity to have what they want, or something like that. Yeah. Like, conflict is about conflict of desire. And maybe there can't be conflict of desire if there's shared beingness. Aaron.
I have a comment, which is like, when I try to when I try to contemplate fourth density and the distinct evolutionary leap from third to fourth, the way that I go about that I found is the most helpful is to imagine the consciousness of a cell in contrast to my consciousness, made up of how many, whatever billion, hundreds of billions of cells. Like, that's a profound leap. And I think that that's the level we need to sort of like open ourselves to like imagine the answer to these questions, because there's no disharmony in fourth density, because we're like, it's a superorganism. It's a planetary self. It's like, the leap is so massive, y'all. It's like, it's a huge, huge leap. And anyway, so I can kind of imagine like a tree or something, or like, I mean, even the physical body complex, like, it's all cooperating. The whole thing is about cooperating. Even if there's cancer, it's still cooperating. It's cooperating to like express life, including the aspect of life that is death, in whatever way is most helpful to teach the spiritual lessons of the entity occupying the body complex. Anyway, so like in a negative fourth density, like in third density, this ruthless corporation that you mentioned, Shang, it's like there's massive competition, but they're not all cooperating around the competition. Like it's competitive, but from an individual standpoint. And in fourth density, competition is the game they've all agreed to, and they're all in it for that. They're all in it to create this super massive empire organization, like this super massive empiring collective. And they all want that collective to be as powerful as possible. And it becomes less about, even though they're each driving to make their own way up the pyramid, they're all like contributing to the organism itself, even though they are simultaneously doing that through their own lens.
Right.
Anyway.
Yeah, I can see like if we're fighting in order to figure out which one of us is stronger. So we both care about finding out which one is stronger. Not necessarily we're fighting each to win. We're fighting, to discover the most strength or something.
Yeah. And you can kind of see it in second density life. Like, there's in animal groups, there's pecking order, there's alpha, beta, there's all this phenomena you can observe, but you wouldn't say that because there's fighting that happens amongst the animals that they're disharmonious necessarily. It's just a part of the organism that is the group of animals. And there's a value to having for whatever, however it is, there's a value to having alpha, and there's a value to the pecking order somehow, maybe. Oh, we have ran through our time. It's 5:01. There were a few more questions we didn't make it through. It's about wanderers. I don't think we'll have time to read, because I do like to end on time and respect everyone's schedules. So sorry about that, y'all. I try to keep us on track. I didn't do the greatest job today, but hopefully you can finish up the reading on your own, and feel free to throw some questions or comments in the group chat if you want to. But I'm going to call it for today. We are complete. Thank you all so much for making yet again another great conversation and exploration of the Law of One. Appreciate y'all.
Likewise. You and 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 you.
Thank you
See you
all.
guys next time.
We had one.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Comment.